can be on secure websites. Leadership roles are assigned as in a traditional group, but they can be changeable because of the virtual nature and the changing requirements of an organization. People are united into one of these virtual teams by shared work objectives and responsibilities, which is somewhat common and normal for organizational teams. They're focused on their responsibilities. Again, virtual teams are driven by results. They are not necessarily measured individually, but only as a team. And best people who operate on virtual teams are self-starters. Now, we see more and more examples of these virtual teams in today's world when there are so many people who are operating in very small organizations and only reach out to specialists when they have an assignment. I have a friend who operates a marketing communications and marketing research firm by himself. When he gets he manages the company, he makes the bid for work. When he gets an assignment, he'll go out and find the researchers to do the work. When they give him their input, he says, fine, I don't need you anymore for this project. Then he goes to somebody else who does the computations. When that's done, he says, thank you very much. I don't need you anymore for this piece of work. He writes the reports himself and interfaces with clients by himself. And he'll pay the people who worked for him as he goes along, so that they may never see the ultimate results of the work, but they know that it must have been successful because they were paid. Virtual teams. Some people you've never met. I have worked with people across the world whom I have never met. The communications were entirely via email, via exchanging documents, or by telephone. And it worked well. You don't have the same trust and the same level of psychological linkage, but this is the way the world is working, and we need to be able to communicate and operate on virtual teams. Leading teams is an important element of those of us who want to be managers or team leaders in our organizations. And it's important to understand that leadership is a learnable skill. And so I want to take you through some of the elements of being a successful leader when you are involved in a team. You should not be afraid of being chosen to be a leader. That's a compliment, and even if you haven't done it many times in the past, it's a learnable skill that you can do effectively. Here are some things you should think about. Don't be afraid to say that you don't know exactly how something works. Very few of us know all of the skills needed for any given project. Look for the people on your team who are experts in what they do and take advantage of that expertise, especially in technical areas. Know when to intervene when something doesn't seem to be working right. Call the group together and say, why isn't this working? What's the problem? Point and ask pointed questions. Learn to truly share power. If you ask somebody to do a piece of work, let them do it. Don't micromanage, don't look over their shoulder while they're doing it. Tell them specifically what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and how it's going to be measured. Let them do their work. Worry about what you take on. In other words, focus on the requirements that you have, not on things that you may have left behind or things that you didn't have a chance to get done. And get used to learning on the job. There's so much going on every day that it's almost impossible to go through a day without making some progress in learning how to do something. And value that. Don't be afraid of it. Group variables are critical when we talk about being successful in communications. And some of the things that don't work so well include pressure for uniformity. In other words, everybody expects everyone to do the same thing or to agree. Not a good practice. We'll talk a little more about that. It's important for each of us to understand what the norms of the group are. In other words, what is expected? What's the standard? I can remember one of the first days when I went to work at IBM, I decided I was going to wear a tan shirt. And I had understood that IBMers were supposed to wear white shirts, but there was the guy in the next office poked his head in and said, we're going to have to take you to the white shirt store tomorrow. Soft but and gentle push towards the norm of the group. And sure enough, I wore white shirts almost every day after that. Silly, but wanting to blend in and not be a distraction. Another thing that happens in groups when there's variable, one of the group variables we talk about is idiosyncrasy credit. Now, when people are joining a group, they generally expect that there will be commonality, that people will act the same, they will kind of operate the same, and they'll work together that way. Sometimes there's some crazy or interesting people in a group. If they are interesting in a smart way, then the group will give them a little credit, a little leeway, because they are producing what the group needs. Think of geeks and their abilities on the technical side. Nobody quite understands what they're doing, but if they get things done in a way that's valuable to the group, people will give them credit for that. So don't be worried if everybody isn't acting exactly the same in a group that you're a part of or a group that you're leading. Conformity situations can be good for groups or they can be bad. If there is ambiguity in the group, nobody knows exactly what to do, then what we find is the group tends to come together and tries to act the same because people are not sure of their own situation and they want to be more conformist. Or if the group is unanimous in its opinions for whatever reason, people will tend to say, okay, my opinion must not be as valid as the group, so I'm going to agree with what's going on. If the group contains powerful, intelligent, respected people or people who are high in the organization, then their opinions and their points of view tend to influence the workings of the group and the thinking of the group. That's one reason why I often say, let's not have the boss in a group meeting, because he or she will tend to influence a group and not get the best thinking out of it. If the group is highly cohesive, they've been together a long time, they probably have tended to start to think alike, and there won't be as much input or unusual thinking within it. Finally, in a crisis, it's best for a group to operate together and in the same pattern, because there's not much room for experimentation in an emergency situation. When a doctor is operating in a critical, life-saving situation, that's not the time for him or her to be experimenting. Same way with firemen.